This is the scariest thing that has ever happened to me, and what makes it worse is that, had things gone down differently, I might not have been here to tell the story. Okay, first things first. I'm a girl about 5'7" and around 130 pounds. This happened to me about 3 years ago, when I was in my early 20s and still a student living in a very safe area. Growing up, I had loved martial arts, and having grown up in a small rural town, I would take what I could get. Karate, fine. Judo, sure. Kung Fu, why not? Taekwondo, sign me up. I loved martial arts and I still do, because they help me discipline my body and mind, and grow my confidence. It had been a few years since I had moved out to my country's capital to study, and I had kind of fallen off the martial arts wagon at that point, with college taking up most of my time. I should also mention that at the time I lived with my younger brother and our cat. We lived on the first floor, the second floor for all my American people, right next to a military camp in a patch of forest which leads to a creek. On our back balcony, there was a circular metal ladder that would lead up to our balcony, and the kitchen door, which of course we always kept under lock and key. Except for when my cat wanted to go out. Then we would unlock the door, and he would go down the outdoor metal stairs to find his cat friends and play. I commuted to my college every day by walking 30 minutes to a bus stop, and then riding the bus for an hour and then walking another 10 minutes until I made it to campus. And when it was time to go home, I would have to do the same thing all over again. So, as you can imagine, it was very tiring. I would be out of the house every day from 10 in the morning until almost 10 at night, so when I had come home, I'd be knackered. I don't believe in premonitions much, but I do believe in instinct, and for quite a while, I felt like something was up with that patch of forest behind our apartment. I felt watched. Maybe it was the blackness of that patch of forest that made me feel uneasy, because there wasn't a single light there, and the outdoor ladder looked like it descended into an abyss. You could take 3 steps into that patch of forest and you would be under complete cover of darkness. It made me feel weird, because even though I couldn't see anything, I knew that something was up. I had no proof, but I knew it. I was in class one Wednesday afternoon with my best friend at the time, and a professor came in to pitch an internship to us. Internships aren't very well known in my country, so professors actually have to argue their case about why, as students, we could benefit from this. My best friend, I'll call her Kay, was very interested. But when the professor listed off the requirements, she realized that she couldn't apply, as her GPA wasn't high enough. This led to Kay having a crying fit after the class was over, which led to a panic attack. And it got so bad that she called her boyfriend to come pick her up from campus. And since I didn't want to leave her alone, I stayed with her until her boyfriend showed up and got in his car with her. The conversation in the car was basically me and her boyfriend trying to console her and help cheer her up. I asked her if she would like me to go over to her place so we could all hang out, but she said that she was okay and didn't want to put me through the hassle of commuting home the next day. She lives a full hour away by car, so 2 hours away by public transport. So it was decided that they would drop me off at my house and they would go to theirs. When we get to my house around 7 p.m., a full 3 hours before I normally come home, I hug her, tell her to text me if she needs anything. I thank her boyfriend, and get out of the car, glad that I'll be home early for a change. I went in through the main entrance, climbed up the stairs to the first floor and put my key in the lock. I opened the door and called out my brother's name, like I always did, but I got no response. The house was dark except for one light in the room where the front door had opened into it, and it was eerily quiet. I felt my stomach tie into a knot because even if I couldn't hear anything, I could feel that someone was there, and when my instincts talk, I listen. I turned right into the hallway that leads into our rooms, and saw my brother's door slam shut hard as soon as I got in the hallway. My brother's room was on the end of the hallway on the left, facing my own room, which is on the right of the hallway. My first thought was that my brother had taken a shower and forgotten to get a towel, so he made a run for it from the bathroom, which is next to my room, in embarrassment. But then I heard muffled whispers coming from his room. They sounded hushed and pressing. I still had no reason to be afraid, but I was on high alert, because I thought my brother and his friends were planning on jumping out of his room and scaring me, and I wasn't about to let them get the satisfaction. So I inched down the short hallway, through the darkness, and before I knock on my brother's door, I take a look at my room. It was a complete mess. My mattress was off the bed. My clothes and my books were all over the floor. My jewelry box was empty and thrown on my bed. All in all, it looked like a tornado had gone through there. And the hushed whispers in the next room sounded extremely pressing and anxious now that I was close. Because though I had tried to tiptoe as silently as possible, my steps had been audible. I realized what was happening, and I went ballistic. At that moment, I freaking lost it. My fight or flight instinct kicked in, and it kicked fight into maximum overdrive. The words danger, thieves, fight hit me like a truck, and I threw my whole weight on my brother's door, bursting that door down so furiously you would think that it owed me money. I saw no one in the room, but it was also a mess and I knew what I had heard, so I ran to the balcony door. I ripped the curtain out of my way and went through the open balcony door just in time to catch one of the thieves right after he had jumped off the balcony ledge. Looking back on it, he looked like a normal guy. Black hair, normal height, athletic build, big earring on his left ear. But at the time, he looked like a freaking monster to me. A vile, putrid, home-invading monster. I started screaming unintelligible things as I saw him stumble around, obviously having hurt his legs, before he got back on his feet and ran away. They were gone. I was safe, but then it hit me. Where the heck was my laptop? I ran into my room and tore the place apart looking for it. It was gone. I started screaming and crying. The unfairness, the audacity, and the cowardice hit me like a steel toe to the stomach. I screamed and cried like I was a Grecian tragedy. I am not rich by any means, and neither is my family. I had an old laptop which was probably worth pennies secondhand, but I needed the laptop for my schoolwork, and without it, I couldn't finish my semester. Not to mention that I don't have many real-life friends, and the majority of my friends at the time were online, so if I lost that laptop, I lost them too. My laptop was lost, and so was I. I felt violated, dirty, and less than. I was afraid that I would throw up or pass out or both. I was taking such rapid and deep panic breaths that my vision began to blur. In the most panicked and grief-stricken state I'd ever been in my life, tears streaming down my face. I called my mother to tell her what had happened, and she told me to call the police. It took me almost a full minute on the phone with the operator, telling her again and again where I lived, who I was, and what had happened, before she understood me and said that she would send someone over. A few days later, I was talking with my mother about the incident, and she told me something that hit me hard. I come from a pretty trilingual household, and she told me that when I called her that night, she couldn't make out what language I was speaking because I had been so panicked. It makes sense why I had to repeat myself over and over to the operator. I started running around the house like a lunatic, checking every door and every lock in a frenzy, until I got to the kitchen and saw that the window had been broken. Without thinking, I slammed it shut. Stupid, I know, but I was beside myself. I wasn't thinking straight. My brother came home a few minutes later, and when he came in, he saw me panicked, crying my eyes out, and speaking almost unintelligibly. He came to the bedrooms and he saw the damage, and told me to go sit in the living room and calm down. I did as he said, and I tried to calm down, but I jumped at every sound and started crying worse, telling him that I was sorry that I got home too late, and that our laptops were gone. The dark house seemed so big to me at those moments, so lonely, so hostile, and I felt so small and helpless. My brother called me over to my room and showed me a pillowcase full of something. When we looked inside, we found both laptops, all of my jewelry, fake, all of it, my old phone and some other stuff. They had been right in front of me the whole time, but I was so messed up that I didn't even register it. The police eventually came about an hour later and did pretty much nothing, so my brother and I took it to the police station and filed a report of the incident. And since I had seen half of one of the culprit's faces, they asked me to come in for an identification. They even sent over someone to dust for fingerprints. Nothing ever came of it. The police said that since they didn't even have a backpack to put the loot in, and resorted to using one of our pillowcases, they were almost 100% junkies. We had the outdoor metallic ladder ripped off our kitchen balcony, much to my cat's displeasure, since that's how they got in. And we also installed several motion detecting lights. For the next few months, I was constantly on edge, and every time I passed near some suspicious characters who hang around near my usual bus stop, I felt a violent rage boil in me. I caught myself looking for the man that I had seen, ready to beat him within an inch of his life. But I never saw him again, or heard his creepy whisper partner again, and my brother and I moved away from that apartment a few months later, because I just never felt comfortable there again. I picked up kickboxing, and because it has made me stronger, it has helped me feel safer. And I also always carry a knife with me now. I still think back to that encounter and realize how stupid I was. What creeps me out the most is knowing that that night, there had been nothing but a thin plywood door separating me from two potentially dangerous men. Even if I know that me busting in my brother's room like a lunatic is what scared them off, because how stupidly fearless I was, I also realized how bad it could have gone. They could have had weapons, they could have had knives, they could have had pepper spray or a chain or whatever, and there were two of them and only one of me. And if they had ganged up on me, even with the adrenaline having turned me into Doom Guy, I don't know how much of a chance I realistically stood against two men, high on whatever they were on, and desperate enough to break into an apartment and stuff loot in a pillowcase. Had they been willing to put up a fight, this would have ended very, very bad for me. What I do know is that I probably still would have busted in there like Doom Guy. So, to the creepy, cowardly people who dared break into my apartment and tried to rob me and my brother and ended up traumatizing me so bad that I had to move, screw you both. I hope for your sake that we never meet again, because I've been kicking that sandbag for 2 years now and picturing your face every single time. So, this just happened to me like 15 minutes ago, and more than anything, I'm just embarrassed that I couldn't have just rolled it off my back and not gotten scared. I live in a fairly low-rent, shitty apartment complex since I'm in college, and that's what I can afford. Obviously, we're all social distancing because of the pandemic right now, but I really wanted to try to get just a bit more sunlight to help me keep my sanity from being home all day every day. And so, I went out of my apartment and sat on a bench near the bus stop just to sit for a little while. I put my earbuds in and called a friend. In my peripheral vision, I could see people standing outside their doors to have a cigarette, and a lady walking her dog, but we were all at very least 40 feet away from each other, so no one really seemed worried. A couple were talking outside their door, and for a moment, I thought they were looking at me. I figured that I was just being paranoid though until the woman started walking in my direction. As she was walking, I was keeping an eye on it, but trying to keep acting like I hadn't noticed. The bench that I was on was near the mailboxes for the whole complex and the bus stop, so I figured that there were plenty of reasons other than me so that she could be coming that way. That was until she stopped just right in front of me. I looked up and noticed that I had seen this woman once before on the bus. She wears a lot of very heavy, dramatic makeup, including drawn on a set of eyebrows just below the ones that she's already growing. She once started talking to me on my morning bus ride to school and gave me an itemized list of the things that she didn't like about my face. I just sort of smiled and nodded and then looked the other way the rest of the trip. It looked like maybe she was talking, so I pulled my earbuds out and hung up on my friend abruptly. "Sorry," I said. "Could you call the police for me?" she said. Okay," I said, picking up my phone. "Actually, never mind," she said quickly, and she looked nervous. "Are you sure?" "Yeah, could I have $1?" I told her that I didn't have any change and I apologized. "Oh, okay. Actually, could you call the police for me?" "Yes," I said again, unlocking my phone. "Wait, actually, it's fine," she said, now smiling at me. Now, when she said it the first time, my brain at first thought, she's not visibly injured. Maybe she's in trouble. Had she been fighting with that man that I saw her with before? Was she in danger? Was she being so casual with me because she needed help, but didn't want to alert someone that she was trying to get it? I looked her in the eyes and said, "Are you sure? I really can call someone if you need it." She said, "No, it's fine." Now, some important context about me is that I have some history of trauma. I don't really want to elaborate too much, but the short of it is that I'm left with a lot of fear of people touching me or violating my personal space. Because some things from when I was growing up, my body now has basically the worst response when someone violates my boundaries, which is to go very limp, and let the other person do whatever they want to me in the hopes that if I don't struggle, they won't hurt me as much. It's basically the worst response that I could have, but it's very hard to reprogram my body. Due to my mental health issues, I've also spent significant periods of my life in psychiatric hospitals for treatment. I've met a lot of people with different issues in the hospital, so I have a bit of a sense for when someone might not be all there mentally. The longer that I talked to this woman, the more of a sense I got that she was perhaps not totally in her right mind. Now, I'm in the hospital and I've had similar experiences where someone who wasn't fully lucid cornered me and got trapped in a potentially not safe situation. This was all made worse by my inability to A, get people to just leave me alone, and B, protect my physical space when my body's been triggered into fight or flight. In the hospital when this happens, the hope is that staff will notice and help me get away, with mixed results as a lot of things go on in hospitals that staff end up either unaware of or not noticing until it's too late, but that's a different story. So, at that moment, my body decided it was time to screw me over. I started to realize that this woman was getting closer and closer to me, and probably not totally well in the head. My body started pumping adrenaline, which made my hands and legs start to feel weak. I felt like I couldn't get enough breath, and my head started to go a little fuzzy. The woman positioned herself to sit down next to me, and I started to try to get up. "Hey, do you want to walk to the store with me?" she said. I stood up. "Oh, sorry, I can't. I have to take my friend to, somewhere." I realized that I couldn't think of a lie fast enough. My brain wasn't cooperating. "He's been texting me all day and, sorry." "Okay," she said, now standing next to me. I started to walk from the bench back over to my building. My legs were feeling pretty wobbly, but I tried to walk as casually as possible. Behind me, I could hear her following. She wasn't moving too fast. I thought maybe she thought that I wouldn't notice, but still, I tried not to seem scared. Not that my legs would have been able to run away anyway. I got into my building about 60 seconds before her, and she was still definitely following. I kept thinking, I just need to get into my apartment and lock the door before she sees which one is mine. My apartment is on the second floor, but it's a short flight of stairs and you can see my apartment door from the bottom, where the main door to the building is. I tried to run up them, but my head was swimming and my legs weren't cooperating. It's like that feeling when you're half awake and you try to move your limbs and they sort of do what you tell them to, but not really. Like they feel sort of far away from you and only semi out of control. I made it up to the stores and luckily I had left my door unlocked. I got in and closed it behind me. just as I heard her opening the main door to the building below me. I locked all 3 locks on my door and went over to the window to see if I could see her. She wasn't visible from the window, which meant she was still in my building. I texted my dad and asked if he thought that I still ought to call the police. He said that I should. I went into my bedroom and called 911. Now, the windows of my bedroom show the other side of the building and the back door. The operator asked for a description and if I knew where she was now, and I told her I couldn't see her out my front window, so I thought that she was still in the building. And then suddenly, I saw her walk out and stand just below my window. The 911 operator said that she would send a few officers and to call them back if she left. I backed away from the window a bit. I was worried that she had seen me looking at her and then know which unit I was in. She looked around for a bit and then just slowly started wandering away towards a different building. Within about 5 minutes, 3 cop cars, it must have been a slow day, rolled in and stopped behind my apartment. They noticed her standing over by the other building, looking like she might try to talk to the woman walking her dog. 2 of the officers parted and went to talk to her while the 3rd drove off. I watched as they talked to her for a while, and then eventually the man that I had seen her talking to at the start came out of a different building than they had been standing in front of before and seemed to coax her in. The officers let her go and talked to the woman with the dog for a moment, and then they drove away. I think probably they decided she has mental health issues but wasn't actively a threat to anyone, so they let her be, which is okay by me. I know that some people deal with chronic issues and can be a little alarming to the people in their community, but most of the time, they don't actually pose much of a threat. Now I'm just sitting here feeling like an overdramatic fool and waiting to regain full control of my limbs and for my heart rate to go down.